Welcome to my Accent is No Accident podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez, and we are here today with a visionary who is a business growth strategist to coaches and consultants and many other entrepreneurs. His name is Jason VanOrden. Jason helps coaches enroll and serve 10 times the clients and cut their workload in half without sacrificing the results they deliver. He draws from 20 years of experience, including launching over 60 courses and programs, working with over 10,000 entrepreneurs, and running a top 10 business podcast for a decade. Jason, it is an honor, a pleasure. I'm very happy to have you here.
Yeah, hi, Maritza. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, I will like to start with our signature question. Jason, what is your accent and why is not an accident?
Yeah, so one thing that as I look back to, so I do a lot of strategy now. As you know, I do I'm sure we'll talk about this as well, the GEM networking community, where I'm the head of that community. I do a lot of teaching, and as I look back, I can see that I picked a lot of that up from my dad. My dad was an educator, and he was always teaching, and I saw him teaching all the time when I was a kid. And also, he was a leader of a number of different groups. At church, he was often a leader. And so I think whether by nature or nurture, I kind of picked up this desire to be somebody who brings people together, somebody who teaches, somebody who helps people from within themselves find that path forward, or that thing that helps them, makes them tick. But it's also it is kind of a weird accident that I ended up where I'm at, because I thought I was going to be an engineer. I went to school to be a software engineer, spent 3 years, or I spent only 3 years as an engineer. And very quickly figured out I can't work for other people. I'm just not happy being somebody's employee. So, it was a path of a number of gambles and experiments. Actually, I don't like to call them gambles, like a number of experiments along the way. When I first quit my job, I thought I was going to be a real estate investor, and I worked with a lot of real estate investors on helping them put together their deals and things. But something that I figured out was that they all needed help with marketing. And I happen to know some things about marketing because I've been studying it for a while. And you might wonder, well, how does an engineer end up learning about marketing? Well, all those years that I was in school as an engineer and all those years I was spent as an engineer, I was also a musician. I was very serious about my music. I was in a number of bands varying from folk bands to jazz bands to alternative rock bands, classic rock bands, like a variety of different music, including writing some of my own. And I poured myself into studying marketing. I remember setting up my first website for one of my bands back in like 1996. And from there, like studying copywriting and email list building. And that was one secret to our building a following, that we always got people onto our email list from our gigs, so then we could email them again and bring them back in. Anyway, so I started, a lot of these real estate investors figured out that I knew about marketing. I started consulting and teaching them about marketing, and realized, hey, I like this kind of consulting teaching thing. And then I had this idea to put on a 1-day crash course in marketing for real estate investors, in person kind of workshop, like 8 hours.
Yeah, awesome.
And I managed to, I was a part of a real estate investing association. And so from that association, I was able to fill the room with 25 people, and in one day made $8,000 teaching marketing to real estate investors. And just this big light bulb went off in my head. I was like, you know what? I love this idea of being able to teach on my own terms, doing something I love, and make good money at doing it. Well, to shorten this story up, from there, I recorded that workshop. I had a course. I started selling it. I was burning it to CDs and printing out the manuals to mail to people and selling it locally. And that's when I went to the internet looking for more people to sell to. And bit by bit, I ended up like experimenting with, this is before social media and stuff, but around 2005, podcasting showed up. And I was like, this podcasting thing is really interesting because as an engineer, I understood the tech. As a marketer, I understood the possibilities and potential there. And as somebody who had been in bands and knew audio, like I knew how to record good audio. So I was like, you know what, let's start a couple podcasts. And um, the next thing I knew, people were asking me to consult them on starting podcasts. And one of my podcasts, which was the first podcast ever about online business, ended up taking off and becoming very popular, turned into a top 10 business show. So you can see as like engineer to real estate investor to
Yes.
marketing consultant to podcasting business consultant to um, you know having a popular podcast, and then our audience started asking for coaching and courses, and they were just so inspired by our story. It was me and a friend sharing our story of just two guys leaving the 9 to 5 to forge their own way as entrepreneurs, and people were really inspired by that story. And so I spent the next 10 years running an educational company for beginning entrepreneurs, and then around 2015, I was ready for a change, and I shifted to working with established coaches and consultants. I decided I wanted to get away from the beginner market because it was getting really noisy. Lots of people saying, "Hey, you can make money online," and like the kind of marketing that people were doing, I was like, "That's not me. I need to move somewhere else." So I moved to working with coaches and consultants, experts who are already established, but they just needed help knowing how to reach and serve more of their audience to have a bigger impact and raise their income at the same time. So that's what I focus on now, is working with coaches and consultants. But that's the zigzaggy path that brought me to what I do today.
And how an interesting, and I can see how it's not an accident. It was just a series of different things that brought you to the next level and the next level. You
Right.
were leveling up to what my perspective is. So, and I love it. And talking about all the things that you just said, number one thing that I didn't know about you was that you were a guitar player in a jazz
Mm.
band or numerous or different jazz bands. And I thought that that was super interesting because, music is something totally, although it's also a business, is something totally different that probably also helps you being regain that balance in life. Would you
Mm.
think that that is your case?
Yeah, I mean, when I do notice, yes. In fact, recently I started playing guitar more again, which was very refreshing because it's so easy for our business to become such a big part of our identity. And there are a number of dangers with that because if business is not going well, I would notice that that would start really affecting my sense of self for one. But then also I've noticed that I need those creative outlets and different pursuits to feed my curiosity. And if I'm stuck in one lane for too long, then I start getting bored and I don't get fresh ideas that I can then put back into my pursuits or into my business. So having that musical pursuit or those pursuits outside of my business are really important for mental health, for feeding my creativity, for just general personal growth as well. And so yeah, I guess that brings a certain balance to my life.
Which is beautiful because that is also showing how other entrepreneurs, how we focus so much in our business. But sometimes if you take the time to take a class or do something different that is also creative, like music, dancing, some people take improv um, lessons as well. That helps them with
Right.
the speaking. I think that also helps you balance. It's not only like having time with your family and then time at work. It's also having time to yourself
Hmm.
and things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And then from talking about yourself, one of the things and the reasons why I told you that I wanted to have you on my podcast and I invited you was because I am very in awe for the community that you are growing with the GEM community. It's a different type of networking. It is centered on the individual and it is about belonging, creating an inclusive
Mhm.
community where everybody feels like they belong. Um, I have talked to different people that we meet from there, and we all agree on that. You can be yourself.
Mm.
I wanted to praise you for that because it's totally different, Jason. Why did you create the community?
Yeah, so the GEM community, or Generous Entrepreneurs in Media, it brings together experts, subject matter experts, and online content creators for collaborations. But it's also just turned into a nice networking community as well. And we started it, my friend and I, Mike Roderick, back in the middle of the pandemic, partly because hey, we realized people are going to need new ways to connect with each other for a little while, and Mike and I like collaborating on projects, so we're like, this will be fun. And one of the biggest reasons for me is that I wanted to stretch myself to be better at networking and be more of a connector. And because as I looked back at the first, many years of my entrepreneurship, I realized I hadn't really invested well in my network building. Now, thankfully I'd had a podcast that was very popular that made me very visible and brought me opportunities and an email list. And so I was okay not doing a ton of networking. I know though that I could have gotten much farther in terms of my impact and opportunities and things had I invested in it. So so I'd been spending several years up leveling as a networker. I'm very naturally introverted. I'm very naturally like, hey, I'll be happy hanging at home with my girlfriend or my daughter or just a small group. So it was to stretch myself too. But here we are, three or coming on maybe almost 4 years later, and it's just become, yeah, very rewarding. And I've noticed that, I keep hearing really great feedback about it, which is very gratifying. But then I've also noticed for me, like there's so many different levels of payoff that I get from it as well. I mean, in addition to strengthening and broadening, deepening my network, sometimes it does end up bringing me new clients. It immediately positions me as, somebody who's connected and must, like, your authority goes up if people show up to a meeting and they see 50 or 60 people there and you're one of the people in charge. Like, that just automatically is going to elevate the trust that people have, especially if you offer a really good experience while they're there. It leads to podcast interviews for me. It leads me to collaborating with really interesting people. So there's this concept that I teach my clients called stack the ROI. And the idea is to choose activities to focus on that give you multiple levels of payoff or fulfillment, so that even if some of them don't work out as well as you'd hope, there's other ways that your effort, your energy, and time going into it are paying off, and that keeps you motivated. So it's one of those very high stack the ROI activities, and so it's just become a key thing that I do. It's now part of my customer journey too, because like I bring people into my orbit, and in fact, a lot of people in the group are constantly sharing the group and bringing others
Yeah.
into my, who now know who I am, and I'm visible with them on a regular basis. So yeah, it's been really rewarding, and I love hearing that others find it really valuable as well. And we'll see what else comes of it. Right now it's that monthly networking meeting with occasionally some other things going on too. But I could see a lot of potential and possibility if Mike and I find additional time and resources to put into it. Maybe we should enlist some of the community members to help us. I don't know. I'm sure there's so much more we could do with it, but it's been really rewarding.
Yes, yes. And it's not only community where you get to network and meet other people, but also you are focusing on learning, and it's so important because you are just giving. And that's one of the most important things in networking, that people go to get
Right.
and you know receive. But what about giving? I always think that it's better to start giving and knowing the person. After all, we are all strangers,
Right.
so
Yeah.
knowing the person that is there with you. I
Yeah.
love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we put generous right in the title. Generosity is definitely one of the values, inclusivity as well. And when I was learning how to be a better networker, one of the things I realized, I mean, I'd get very overwhelmed with it sometimes because there's always so many different people you could be connecting with. And I felt like I needed to try to keep up with as many people as possible. And a friend of mine, Dory Clark, she talks a lot, or, she used to talk a lot about networking. She's a great networker, and she's also an introvert like me. And when I started going to like some of her networking dinners and seeing how she managed those, I'm like, well, here's somebody who's also an introvert who's doing a really great job at being a connector. And I started kind of noticing and learning from her. And I remember texting her one day and saying, I often feel overwhelmed by the number of people I have to try to keep up with. And she's like, just focus on the ones that you feel a natural connection with. If there's something about them, you're like, I want to get to know them and just invest there. So I was like, okay, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Seems so obvious. But so when we started GEM, I knew that, we wanted to have, the breakout room format where you'd have several opportunities to meet other people, but we wanted to focus the discussions on things that not only, gave people, sure, an opportunity to say what they did and who they served and, the little pitch, right? But that there was a question to really dig into where you felt like you got to know that person at least a little bit and kind of a little of the essence of who they are, so that afterwards you're not just connecting with people based on like, oh, they're, a such and such coach or a podcaster that we might be able to like benefit each other transactionally, but that you knew something about what made them tick, what motivated them, what was important to them, so that you were also making decisions about who you followed up with based on actually feeling a connection of curiosity or something with that person as well. So that's one of the things we've really focused on in GEM.
I love it. And one of the things that I love is the questions that you come up with to break the ice. I love the questions. Yeah. And the last question was also, I found it on your blog, the last blog that you wrote, that is in regards to entrepreneurs and how we deal with our mental health and neurodiversity.
Right.
I love that blog, and especially because you emphasize on how to help yourself as an entrepreneur is having self-compassion. Would you like to dig into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So mental health is a really important topic for me. My entire adult life, I've dealt on and off with anxiety, sometimes, depression. I've been in therapy, I've taken medications. I was in my 20s, I found out that there was a history of this in my family and things started making more sense. And then it wasn't until my 40s that I found out, oh, I've had ADHD my entire life too. Wow. I just got really good at masking it with my abilities. And so that also became a very important part of my life. And for the first, this is another thing for the first many years of being an entrepreneur and a content creator and having a following and being visible, I didn't talk about my mental health struggles at all. I kept that very close. And there are different reasons for that. And part of it is, you're worried about the stigma, you're worried about the judgment of what people will think. It's like, well, who's going to trust me to help them with their business if they think I'm this like anxious, whatever, person. Yes. But then I had an experience once where I was really in a tough place, and I went to a mastermind and actually traveled. It's actually down in Orlando where you're at, and I traveled down there, and a bunch of us got together in a house for a few days to mastermind together. And I had showed up with all my like business questions to ask and get help on, but when it came to my turn to be in the hot seat, I decided, what? Something just made me think, I'm going to go ahead and just be really vulnerable here and just tell them I've been really struggling this past year, like with my motivation, with my energy, not knowing, it's been a really tough mental health year for me. And I got such validation from the group. And out of the 10 of us, there were like 3 others who had also their own struggles with mental health and were sharing those things as well. And I felt that so relieving to actually talk about it and not have people judge me, but rather validate me. And then realizing that in that group of 10 very successful, accomplished people, that like 30-40% of us all had, that in our history. And, we'd all, had some, yes. Everyone's going to have times where they're feeling anxious or depressed, right? But at least 3 or 4 of us that really had that. I was like, okay, this is clearly a thing that needs to be talked about more. And then I came across this study that said, yeah, the research shows that entrepreneurs have mental health challenges at a higher level than the general population. Now, I don't know if that's a nature or if that's a chicken or an egg thing, if it's you know, a lot of us have ADHD and want to go our own way and end up entrepreneurs. If being entrepreneur just brings up a lot of anxiety and stress, I don't know, but it's there, right? And so I made a very deliberate decision several years ago, you know, that would have been like maybe 7 years ago, that I'm going to start talking about this more in my content. I'm going to write about it at times. I'm going to be very open about it and stop worrying about the stigma, because we need to raise awareness, which means we need to share our stories more. And when I found out that I had ADHD, one of the most helpful things for me was to listen to a lot of stories from other adults who had found out late in life that they had ADHD, what it had been like for them, how they were coping with it. And so I was like, that's the thing. We need to share our stories more. So I've you know, tried to make that something that I do on a regular basis, is talk about my own mental health story.
Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode. Yes, and it's so important. And we are like, the world is shifting now. Everything is changing. So now these kind of conversations are more open, and there is not such a big stigma as it was before, like when the baby boomers were in charge.
Right.
Now we have the baby boomers moving out, and our generation is taking over. And we are noticing that there is a little more compassion, and everybody is asking for empathy.
Yeah.
And just, I am amazed how many people say today, don't you need to be kind to others because you don't know what they have inside them,
Right.
or
And
what
what's
they
going on for
brought
them.
with them, what they're bringing with them.
Yeah.
So I also have been in your shoes, like saying, I am not going to talk about this. I cannot talk about this because people are going to see me different. So now in my case, I'm a Latin woman living in another country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a Latin and I'm a woman. And then
Mm-hmm.
and my accent, which is no accident, it's not, sometimes doesn't help very much when you are trying to communicate something that is difficult for you to talk about.
Right.
So those things kind of help me also to go, no, wait a minute, this is who I am, and I'm proud of myself. And the reason why I have an accent is because I have been half of my life living in my country. This is
Mm-hmm.
totally normal. And this is who I am. I love my country. I love my roots. I love the family, my heritage. I love who we are. I love,
Right.
my salsa, my vallenato. I love the way we celebrate Christmas. I love how everything is a fiesta. That is something to be proud of, and not something that you
Yeah.
have to hide.
Right.
So actually, one of the things with my husband that he makes fun of me is that when we have like a disagreement, my accent is very, very strong.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you fight, you fight with me in Spanglish. So it's very interesting. So when you are feeling vulnerable, your accent, because it's who you are, the core, the base of you comes out more.
Right.
And many times I saw people when I was in corporate trying to explain to their boss why they didn't do or why they couldn't do, and they couldn't talk about it. And I had to be I started to be the one going into those offices and saying, listen, they do know English and they know what they want to say, but they cannot say it because they are being vulnerable. And the best way to express themselves is in their core language, the very first language. And they're trying to say it in English. And it's not that they cannot speak it. And
Hmm.
it's not that they are not bilingual. It's just that accent becomes because their brain is telling them to send those words.
Right.
So people started to realize, oh, and the other thing is I'm Colombian, so we're very sweet, very nice. So we always say, please, por favor. Oh, would you please, 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 please? We always kind of like beg things, or we say, oh, thank you so much. You're the best person in the world. And we put flowers and everything when we say thank you. So
Right.
when we have a boss that is direct,
Mm.
that crunches our heart because
Right.
we take it personal. We're
Right.
like, why are you treating me like this? What did I do? You go like, "Ah, what did I do?"
Right.
So many times I had to say, oh, tone it down, tone it down
Right.
because it's a different culture. And this is why I open up the podcast, like you were saying. I open up the podcast because sometimes we have to create awareness that we are total different people around the world. And
Right.
we are in a different world today where the two of us can are in different states right now,
Right.
but you have had people in other countries in your podcast, and I have had people from other countries in
Yeah.
in my podcast. So is we are able to communicate and to become one better than we used to do it 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to be open to create more diversity because we are closer than we were before.
Yeah. Yeah. More easily
And
connected. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And one of the things that you do, I love because it helps create those connections. And that's how you help coaches. Can you explain to me? And then
Hmm.
I'm going to kind of like switch a little bit that topic, but I connect it because it's still the same thing. You work with the 3R method,
Yeah.
but before we get into it, I would like to ask you what is the 3R method?
Yeah, the 3R method is a framework for creating messaging and positioning for a brand. I particularly apply this to experts, coaches, and consultants to help them stand out and, in a very clear and compelling way, communicate the essence of their brand, the thing that sets them apart and makes them the ideal, the must-have solution for their ideal client. And the 3 R's are relevance, resonance, and remarkability. And when you have these three things defined together, um, coaches find it a lot easier to know what to talk about in their content, what to talk about when they're just sharing their elevator pitch with somebody, what they should talk about when they go on podcasts to be interviewed, um, and what it helps them frame their offers in a way that makes them a lot stronger as well. So, and that's one of the things I love doing. I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about. Um, this idea, this theme of being seen, being able to show up as you are, and we strive to do that at the gem community, allow people to feel like they can be themselves. And what I love doing most, even though I call myself a business strategist for coaches and consultants, is
Yes.
I love helping those experts really identify what sets them apart and makes them amazing, what their unique genius is, really own that, and then know how to communicate and package that in a way that maximizes their reach, their visibility, their impact, and then allows them to make more money as well, which they deserve to get paid well for their expertise too.
That is awesome. So give me an example of how the 3R method um, helps these entrepreneurs enroll more clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So relevance is about, is your message going to immediately connect with, so actually, let me back up for a second. One of my favorite quotes in marketing is, always enter the conversation already going on in the mind of the prospect. This is from a book by Robert Collier from like back in the 30s or something like that. And really it's talking about how important understanding and empathy is in marketing and sales. So relevance in your messaging is making it clear who you're speaking to and what are the outcomes or challenges that you help them with, so that when that ideal client that you're trying to reach sees your content, your messaging, your offer, immediately has that sense of, oh, this is for me. And this is marketing one-on-one. Who's it for? What do you offer? And we often get that part. I mean, there's always more we can do, but that's the first thing I think most of us think about in our marketing. Now, of course, when you're defining who that ideal client is, you want to be as specific as possible, and not necessarily in demographics, although that might be relevant. I mean, for some people, they might be like, yeah, I work with women particularly, or I work with people over the age of 40, because that maybe makes sense for them. But even more so, in terms of that conversation going on in their mind is, what is their life like right now? What is it that's motivating them to finally go looking for a solution or support? What is that thing that they're waking up thinking about in the morning, going to bed thinking about at night? Like, they want it solved. So you can connect with that. And they might not realize, they might not understand your solution. They might not even be aware of it, but you got to meet them where they're at first, so that then you can bring them on a journey to help them see it's like, oh, the thing that you offer is exactly what I've been looking for. I didn't realize it. So that's the relevance piece. The resonance piece is about building trust. And one of the best ways to build, I mean, trust is the precursor to somebody wanting to do business with you, right? They got to trust that you're capable of helping them bring about their best interests, and that you have their best interests in mind. So they want to know that you're both credible, but that they can, you're also likable, that there's a connection with you. And there's all these shortcuts that we use as humans to decide who to trust. And we're always looking for those clues about our values, our shared values, or our shared meaning, the things that we have in common. That can be everything from, inclusivity is an important value. And so I try to associate with others who value that as well. And sometimes it's as simple as, we're both parents, and so I'm inherently going to trust you a little bit more when you're talking about being a parent.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah.
sometimes even dropping in little things about like, hey, I play guitar, or I love sci-fi, right? There's some people be like, oh, you're my type of person, a musician who also likes sci-fi. So it's about putting your vision, your values, your personality into your messaging, so that people have that opportunity to connect with that trust. And the problem, the mistake that a lot of experts make is that they focus so much on the credibility part, because they want to be seen as a credible expert. But the research shows that trust is not just about credibility, it's about that warmth or likability as well. And that's more about who you are and how you show up than it is about how good you are at what you do. So that's the resonance piece. And so, it's communicating why you do what you do outside of making money, right? Or personal accolades. And not that there's anything
Right.
wrong with that, but like, for instance, I love working with coaches and consultants, because I find that's a great way to solve problems in the world and make a bigger impact, because everybody has their unique genius and unique perspective, and certain people and problems that they are especially able to serve out there. And I want them to connect with more of those people, because we're just going to make everything much, much better the more that I can empower those experts to reach others. So that's resonance. So we have relevance and resonance. Remarkability is about, well, what is different? What sets you apart? What is different? If they find you relevant and resonant, why should they stop and listen to you above other options that are out there? And when we're trying to meet that person where they're at, we need to realize that they might have been looking around for a while. There's probably some things that are overwhelming and unclear. There's maybe some things they've tried out and it didn't work well for them. And so now they're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this happen. Whether that's, growing their business, whether that's learning how to manage their ADHD, whether that's learning to play guitar, or whatever that thing is that they want to do better. And so we've got to cut through that, not only the noise in the market of all the other experts who are saying seemingly similar things as us, but we got to cut through all the head junk in the mind of the person that we're trying to reach. We need to give them new hope. We need to give them a reason to go like, oh, this sounds like it could help me. And despite past failures, or despite being tired of hearing people talk about, whatever in the market, this sounds like something different. This is giving me new hope. This is like a missing piece, or a different perspective that I hadn't heard before. So now I'm going to lean in and go, you know what, tell me more, because this sounds interesting. So let me give you a quick example. I've got a client. her relevance piece is she works with stage performers like actors, some with dancers and stuff like that, right? So the thing and the outcome that she helps them with is to be able to convey a larger range, a broader, deeper range of emotions and characters on stage. So they want to be able to have more challenging roles. They want to be able to, just embody different things on stage and be a better performer. Now, the resonance piece is that she has she stands very much for things like inclusivity and diversity. Also, her artistic vision is a little bit more, I would say, fringy than mainstream. So she attracts people who are in that side of the artistic spectrum. So there's
Yeah.
people who really connect with the type of artist that she is and what she values within her art. The remarkability piece is this: a lot of those actors, when we did customer research, we found that they were tired of being told by directors or acting coaches and stuff to like dig within themselves and their own personal experience in order to be able to portray anger or sadness or whatever. And like that can get exhausting to like have to dig into your own personal life every night in rehearsal or every night in performance on stage. And what if you want to portray something that you don't have much personal experience with, right? Then you're stuck. So the remarkability factor for her is, are you an actor who wants to portray and embody a wider range of emotions and characters on stage, but you're tired of being told that you have to like dig into your personal experience? What if there was another way? What if I could teach you a simple vocabulary that you could put together in different, and by vocabulary, not like words vocabulary, but like acting technique vocabulary that you could put together in different ways to quickly portray and try out different choices on stage and arrive at that exactly how you want to deliver a particular line or embody a certain character. So she teaches something called effort theory for actors, right? So this is a remarkability factor. It's like, hey, if you've been struggling, you've tried these different acting techniques out, and you just feel like you've plateaued and you feel stuck and you're tired of hearing something. Here's something that you haven't heard of before. This might be the missing piece for you. Let me invite you in and give you a taste of this. And then when actors discover that and try it out very quickly, they're like, oh, this is amazing. This is awesome. I'm seeing the possibility here. And now they want to take her course or mentor with her in order to learn
Yes.
the whole system. So those are the three R's for her: the relevance and the resonance and the remarkability, and how they fit together to attract her ideal clients to her mentoring and her courses and programs, things like that.
I love it. I like the way that you put your three R's. And that example, I love that example because it truly talks about how you can become remarkable at what you do. And the first one is connect with the person that is in front of you and find that one thing has that makes you be have some commonality with them. Incredible. I love it. We are almost getting to the end, but I have one more question. What are the
Sure.
biggest mistakes you see some people making with their content that the 3R method solves?
Yeah. So with the 3R method, we can put together different messaging hooks. So I gave you one messaging hook that she has. If you're an actor who wants these things, but you're struggling with this and don't want to do it that way, what if there's this other way over here, right? And ideally, you want to have a handful of those messaging hooks, and they tell you, here's what you should be talking about and writing about, creating content about on the front end in order to grab the attention of the right people, the people you want to be serving. And here's how you want to use those to frame your offers so it really stands out as the must-have solution. And so the thing that is missing is that, well, first of all, they assume that there isn't anything special about what they have to offer, and they're saying all the same things as everybody else, and they might have all this credibility in terms of, I've written a book and I do this speaking and I've won this award, but like we talked about, that's not enough to earn trust, just that credibility element, right? And so one thing I work on a lot with my clients is we come up with what are those 3 or 4 messaging hooks that they can use in a variety of ways. And you create lead generator workshops or downloads with them. Because when you've got those nailed down, suddenly your entire customer journey, your marketing on the front end, bringing people through that customer journey to the point of trusting you and being ready and being eager to work with you right away, gets so much easier. So, when I read sometimes you'll see content on LinkedIn and like I can tell that it's trying to talk to this person about this particular outcome, but there's no hook. Like immediately they're just, I can tell they're probably losing people because they're not grabbing attention right at the beginning of that post or at the beginning of that podcast. The whole idea doesn't have that nugget of like, here's why if you are this person, you need to listen right now. And that holds a lot of people back. But once you've nailed those messaging hooks down or know how to develop more of them and recognize them in your own work, and things get so much easier.
Beautiful. I love this conversation. But before we leave, I would like to give you the opportunity to tell the audience where they can find you.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at jasonvanorden.com. I'm also on LinkedIn a lot. That's where I post most of my content. So that's a great place to follow me if you like to follow along on social media. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, I would love to have some more information about this 3R method and how to get started with it, just send me an email, jason@jasonvanorden.com. And I've got a little worksheet with a video that I can send to you to start thinking through, like, what is my 3R messaging and what is a messaging hook that I could use to start grabbing the attention of more of the right people that I want to work with.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. This was beautiful. I loved having you on the podcast. There are more questions that are coming up to my head, but we don't have enough time. So
Never
I
enough
might
time,
have to
right?
invite you again.
Yeah, sure.
So thank you so much. Would you like to leave the audience with a final thought?
Well, final thought is that, if you're listening to this and you're somebody with a message, with a methodology, with ideas that could have a big impact out there, just know that despite where you're at in that journey, like the world needs your perspective and your ideas. So, keep testing, keep experimenting, keep putting your voice out there and trying to uncover what it is that is really different about how you show up and what you have to say, so that you can show up at your best and make the impact that you are uniquely positioned to give in the world.
I love that. Yes. And as always, I tell my audience, thank you so much for being here with us. Hit the subscribe button, make a nice comment to Jason and cheer him up today. And remember, you came to this world because you're loved, to be loved and to love one another. Until next time, bye. Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.